Is the SG Special still worth buying 5 years after its reintroduction? Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Figured we've checked in enough on the Les Paul standards. We know those are good, but the SG Special, this one caught my attention on Reverb, and it's like, yep, we're gonna document that one because it's got some interesting wood grain. But I have not checked out one of these things in a while. And truth be told, the one I documented was not actually the full original collection last time. That was one of those transitional models where it still had some Henry J era elements to it before getting the hand-wired pots and orange drop capacitors. So in many ways, this is the first time we're actually reviewing the current production level SG Special. So if you don't know what these things are, they are a P90 equipped SG. Normally you have humbuckers, you've got the trapezoid inlays versus your dots. And these were first introduced in the year 1961, and they would look something similar to this. However, if you type in Gibson SG Special, you might notice you pull up a lot of like stripped down SGs that have the humbuckers. Even in the 80s, you can find something similar along those lines, because the SG Special, as we're seeing it today, really was not produced a lot under Gibson USA. It was a custom shop only model, and they didn't make tons and tons of those. It wasn't until the original collection came out in 2019 that they brought these things back. Now, when they were first introduced, it was $1,500. Today, they're $100 more, which isn't too bad, all things considered with inflation. But they were originally offered in a faded Pelham blue finish and a vintage sparkling burgundy. Those were great to launch with, but after a couple of years, they did get stale quickly. But now that the used market's caught up, they're starting to become cool again, but we're currently rocking a vintage cherry and a straight up ebony version as what you can buy brand new today. But this is a 2023 version that I bought used off of Reverb simply because of the cool wood grain. So when it comes to mahogany, sometimes you can find some ribbon flame and dancing within it. Most times it's just going to be a plain straight grain. But I like to document unique examples on the show. And even though this one definitely has some player's wear, I think it's still cool. Seems to be pretty well balanced for an SG as well. But outside of just the guitar, we do get a case. It's your standard rectangular latch version with the Gibson branding on the outside that's brown. Then this one might have been produced back when we still had baby photos. Yes, indeed. You can see all the cool figuring right there. Now, if you're curious, when did Gibson stop doing the baby photo? It was August 17th of 2023. I might be asking, hey, Trogly, how on earth do you know that? I actually had a viewer of the show reach out to me. He was at the Gibson plant. I think he had won a tour, or maybe he was like one of their vendors there or something. I don't remember exactly on that end. But the guy there said, yeah, we just turned those off yesterday. Head management didn't like the quality of them. So I've always been hopeful that maybe one day they'll bring this back, but it'll be mod collection style photo where everyone gets that introduced. So far we're just like, oh, no more baby photos, cost savings, sad, but maybe one day they'll come back because that was always such a nice touch. I thought this was funny. I've got the original sales tag of this one that shows it was sold new in April of 2024. So it looks like he traded it back into the shop that I got it from, but he definitely kept the multi-tool. But everything else is here: polishing cloth, owner's manual, Gibson app, pre-pack checklist, case key, silica packet. But to learn more about this cherry beauty, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Got some good news. All that scuffing and hazing on the top right there, for the most part, cleaned off. I mean, you can still see some, but now it's just so shiny and polished, you don't notice it too bad. But let's check out our P90s. Underneath the cover, the neck one looks like so, labeled as Rhythm P90 Soap Bar. The bridge pickup is the same, but labeled lead. Now, if you compare the neck join to the previous one that we looked at, this one's much tighter. Don't have any gaps going on here. And it does look like we have a long neck tenon construction on this particular model. And the bridge pickup cavity looks very similar. But it's labeled VE for Vintage Cherry, then SG Special 00. But when you first take the guitar apart, that's not what it looks like. You actually have these base plates within it. And that's what the P90s go into. However, you can convert this to mini humbuckers as well, utilizing these two. And that's why you've got this additional channel route right here. It's to let the screws go in for both. The last time we had 4 screw holes in that, and this time we just have the usual 2. But then to install the pickup, you just have those 2 height adjustment screws go through the top of the cover as well as through the pickup. Then you put these springs over top of the back of the screws. Sometimes people use a foam block. Then those screws go into these 2, and those springs allow the pickup to actually have some resistance when you push it down, and if you want to have it higher up or lower into the body, because that affects your tone drastically. But here's what the guitar looks like with the pickguard removed. And could you rock it like that? I guess, but the pickguard's also your tenon cover silver in this case, so you'll be left with this kind of discoloration. If you're wondering why this piece of wood looks different, that is the maple block that they used to cap off the truss rod channel route. And when we first unboxed it, this thing still had the original plastic film over top of it. It's a player's grade guitar, so I decided just to remove that. There was kind of a blemish on the guard right there. It's like something sticky left over. And to remove it, you'd cause more scratches, so I just decided I'll leave that be for someone else to decide. But we better grab the pickup readings before I forget. So 7.94 k ohms in the bridge, 8.03 in the neck, and the middle position at 399. Being an original collection guitar, you don't have any fancy electronics on these guys for taps or anything. Just 2 volumes, 2 tones, 1 for each pickup set, an output jack on the front, and a 3-way toggle switch over here. So the wood grain on this is just quite fascinating. Unfortunately, it was more of an overcast day, so I didn't quite get the B-roll shots I was hoping for, but trust me, this thing moves phenomenally in person. And I really like this cutaway edge right here. It's got a lot of tight flamed figuring. However, it's very different. You know, this side looks like so, your typical ribbon flamed mahogany. Whereas over here, it gives me more like sapele vibes. Because rather than seeing an extreme difference in color in certain areas like you do here, this one actually just has it within the wood. Like, it's not visible at all times, but as you move the guitar, you can see the ridges. So it's just got a little bit for everyone here. And that's why I thought, hey, why not pick it up? It was a little more than I wanted to pay, but whatever. As far as the tailpiece, these shipped with the lightning bar wraparound style to help with intonation. The back side of them were looking like so in 2023. But we can move on from our 2-piece mahogany body to our mahogany neck and rosewood fretboard. I did go ahead and condition this. Unfortunately, with wintertime, I gotta take most of the B-roll shots before I do like the full cleaning. Like the ones you're seeing, I cleaned the guitar, then I had to take it outside before the sun sets at 4:30 in the afternoon, but I couldn't condition the fretboard yet. Well, here's what it looks like after that process. It's definitely a lot nicer now. And as far as tooling marks go, I would say this example's pretty good, except for kind of right here towards the middle registers of the neck. You can see a little bit of it, but that's kind of to be expected. I remember things were like really bad late 2018, early 2019. Our nut measure is 1.71 inches. That increases to 2.1 by the 12th. They advertise them as slim C's. It measures 0.8 at the first fret neck depth. And wow, 0.91 at the 12th. So yeah, that is pretty slim. However, it's not like a D-shaped neck. This still has a very rounded back, which I personally prefer. Here that is on the contour gauge, 1st and 12th fret. But now we can move on to the face of the headstock. If there was one complaint I had for the dealer that I bought this from, I really wish that would have been deliberately shown in the photos. There's a pretty nasty ding right here on the face I probably would have considered passing. But now that it's here, I guess I'll move on. It's a gremlin you have to live with to have the awesome wood grain. And not super noticeable from far away, but I do want to make sure you're made aware of it if you're interested in buying it from me after the documentation. Otherwise, everything's looking good here. Truss rod's perfectly functional and has the blank truss rod cover. But now the moment of truth. Do I finally have a true original collection? I wasn't expecting anything less. So yes, this model should have the hand-wired pots with our orange drop capacitors. So this updated review was much needed. And in fact, I guess you could use it as a comparison. However, I don't use that same amp, and I don't own that old SG Special anymore. But hey, we can look at how pretty this example is again. This is really where you can kind of see those lines I was talking about in the more sapele-like one. The more extreme angle you look at this way, the more it comes out. Otherwise, it just looks kind of like a regular mahogany grain, whereas over here, it's more ribbon-like. And here's the thing. Usually, when you see a piece of mahogany that kind of looks something like this, they tend to be heavier. Not always, but usually they are. And you can find this throughout Gibson's production. Even on some 60s examples, I've seen things like this. It's something that I've just dubbed the term wood grain lottery, because when you buy a brand new guitar, sometimes it's unseen like a Guitar Center. And sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can cherry pick it with like Sweetwater and other dealers. Sometimes you gotta think, how picky do you want to be as a collector? Because if you buy a brand new guitar, you can bring vintage guitar hunting elements to it, like the thrill of the chase to find the one with the grain that you really have to have. You can rig the lottery if you got enough time, patience, and money. Because many times, once these things hit the used market, they actually become more valuable. It just kind of depends. I just think it's more fun to document a visually striking example like this. But hey, we've got a strap button right here at the heel and another one at the bottom. It's the slightly more wide style. Before we move up the back side of the neck here and get to the back side of the headstock where we can see our button Clusen style tuners with serial number dating this to the 68th day of 2023, initial batch, production number 133, made in USA. Now, as far as the condition of the back, it's not too bad, but we do have a couple of dings on it. You gotta get it in the light just right. I did capture a couple of photos. I'll put it on my listing. Nothing too crazy. Oh, and here's something else. We have the normal back plate. The last one we reviewed still had the textured, which was an old Henry J thing. Now let's check it out together. How heavy is it? I would guess somewhere around 7.5. Well, not too bad. 7 pounds, 5.7 ounces. Let's go ahead and plug this very interesting lottery winner in and see how these P90 sound. I haven't played a special in a while. It takes a little bit to get used to the palm muting with your wraptail piece, but I really enjoy this P90 up here. Watching my old video, I always thought the bridge P90 sounds rather thin in these things, which is good for certain style licks. But don't forget, you also have volume and tone controls, so I find if you roll that down to like a 7, it kind of balances them out. As far as the neck dive test on this particular one, it's a very nicely balanced SG. pause the demo. That sound right there. It's great tone. So there we go, a Gibson SG Special from the year 2023. Is it still worth buying one of these in the current year? On paper, it's hard to justify them. They do have the Gibson decal, so nothing fancy up here as far as like a mother of pearl headstock with a crown inlay. You only get the dot inlays rather than trapezoids or anything else, but at least you do still get the binding, and you don't get the full intonation setup. It's just a wraptail piece, and you get the P90s instead of humbuckers. And with a brand new SG Standard with all those other additional appointments, only being like $200 more? It's hard to say yes, but at the same time, these things just have their own identity. Wraptail pieces feel different than stop bar tail pieces. Some guys are gonna dig that. The P90s certainly have their own thing going on. I really do enjoy the P90 pickups. The other points that we've mentioned, that's just something you have to decide if it's for you or not. Or maybe you could check out one of the older SG Standards that actually came with P90s. There are versions of them out there. But overall, I would say this was a very nice example. I'm glad I picked it up and got to experience the fun wood grain that this one has. But that's all I have for you guys tonight. If you're interested in being the next owner of this particular one, now that my review is done, you can find it for sale on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. Thank you for watching, and take care.